Hello, 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 everybody. How are you doing? I hope you're doing wonderful. I'm finally back to a live stream. Sheesh. It's been too long. Too long. Hey, Nate. What's up? Oh my goodness. I hope you guys are killing it at life. And we have so many things to talk about tonight. I know it's been ages since I live streamed. Good reasons for that, I promise. But I'm here now. So, yes. One of the big things we're going to be talking about on this beautiful Sunday evening is the fact that it seems a lot of progressives have a very weird stance on the Russia-Ukraine war. And it's bothering me significantly. So I want to talk about that and explain why I think some of those takes are disgusting and incorrect. Let me know in the comments how the sound sounds and how the visions and all those things. I'm working with a very new setup, very clean, very updated. From Wesley, hello. I've only seen you a couple of times. However, you reported. Sorry, let me block this. There we go. You've reported so many incredible news about the fall of Trump accurately. Thank you, Wesley. I try my absolute best. Sounds good. Good. Sounds good. Is what we're getting from the chat. So we are gonna look at much more than just the Russia-Ukraine stuff. So let's save the Russia-Ukraine stuff for a second here. I saw this pop up in my feed and I got nervous because it was Fox News. Unfortunately, I have like right-wing videos that get suggested to me because when I'm preparing for my show, I have to go to right-wing channels sometimes to find content to like get the original source video that I wanted to talk about. And that makes it where YouTube thinks I like watching right-wing videos. So I get those in my suggested. But because of that, this popped up, Biden's cognition under question after latest sit-down interview. And I watched it and it was pretty awkward. The mental glitch Biden had. So, yes, Jared, we are back live. And I'm able now to live stream more. So this is hopefully the start of something beautiful. But while we're waiting for people to hop in, I know we just started. I want to take a look and see just how bad, of course, the right wing's freaking out about this moment. It's gone mega viral already, but how bad is this mental glitch? Or is it just being played up by the right? Let's see.
It's my intention. My intention to run again. And we have time to make that decision.
Dr. Biden is for it. Mr. President. Oh.
Dr. Biden thinks that, my wife thinks that we're doing something very important and that I shouldn't walk away from it.
That was President Biden.
And then you got the Fox News host. It seemed like he was just trying to think of the right wording. That honestly wasn't an example of a huge cognition failure in my mind. Because I think we all do that sometimes. Especially when you're getting asked about your possible plans to run for re-election, you got to be careful with your words. And it seems he was just very, blank stare while he thought of the correct thing to say there. I think that's a little overblown. What about y'all? Gosh, it's good to see you guys again. Yay. Yeah, I think the only difference between what Biden just did there and what Barack Obama always does is Barack Obama has a look on his face like, I'm about to say something. Biden's face just was blank. So I guess that's why they're saying, oh, he completely forgot how to speak English. But that wasn't him actually having any issue, I don't think. Ellen said, I've seen him actually glitch before, and that wasn't it. Agreed. Okay. Next thing, if y'all aren't aware, early voting has already started, so go vote. Might as well do it early so that something crazy doesn't happen on election day where you accidentally aren't able to vote. I don't know which states have opened up, but if it has opened in your state, definitely go make that happen. But because of that, we're already getting information about the on-the-ground situation of what the turnout is looking like, and what that could mean for the actual results, which is pretty exciting. We are in the middle, finally, of the midterms. So I saw this report pop up from MSNBC that maybe is showing a hopeful message for the Democrats going into Election Day.
Out that we're seeing in Georgia, as I mentioned, first day turnout nearly double what it was back in 2018. That's pretty astounding in and of itself. What does this say about what we're going to see play out in Georgia over the next couple of weeks?
That's right, Yasmin. This is record-breaking midterm turnout here in Georgia on the first day of early voting. It was, as you note, almost double of what it was in 2018 and just a few thousand votes lower than what it was in 2020, which is the presidential election year. And since then, we've seen...
That's incredible. Coming out of Georgia, only a couple, that's the state they're talking about, right? Only a couple thousand votes less than 2020, a presidential election that had very high turnout, at least these first early voting numbers. That is good news, because as you guys are probably aware, generally high voter turnout benefits the Democratic Party. My answer to that is because I think when you just take the mass of the population, regardless of voters, non-voters, just generally the American population, a more significant majority of that population is Democratic or is more liberal against the current Republican Party than the elections would make you believe. But not enough people go and vote to make that always the outcome that we see in the election results. So then whenever you get more people to actually go out and vote, it's more representative of the truth that more people in the United States are actually left of center, or despite where you want to set them on the political spectrum, are against the current Republican Party.
Some updated numbers come in. It is now upwards of 172,000 in terms of the early vote numbers. Now, what does this all mean? I met earlier today, sat down with a prominent Republican who's aligned with Herschel Walker, and he said that this is a real wake-up call for Republicans for the simple reason that historically we've seen early voters are predominantly Democrats. This shows what we've suspected in the data, what we've seen in the data for some time now, which is that 2022 is shaping up to be an unusual midterm year in that both parties are energized and mobilized. Usually the president's party is demobilized and the party out.
That's super interesting. Yeah. And as he mentioned, that's good news for the Democratic Party. And we'll take a look at the most updated polling in a second here. But let's see. Didn't early voting in Texas cover 2 weekends in the past? Only one this year, so I'm going to make sure to go tomorrow since I'm on a cruise next weekend. Oh, that's fun. From Jared. It's odd, but dude's old. Why not take a few extra seconds? Yeah. The funny thing is, I think there's perfectly fair concerns that you could have about Biden's mental cognition, but the way in which the right talks about it makes me lose so much respect and listen so much less to their critiques about Biden's cognition, because they're, oh, you know, he can't even speak. Oh my gosh, he doesn't know where he is. Oh, he's being controlled by the puppet masters. Okay, cool. Well then, I can't talk with you about the subject then. We can't have an actual good faith conversation about any actual concerns there could be. And to answer your question, Jared, I don't know if it covered 2 weekends in the past. You're probably correct. But I'm definitely going to try to go tomorrow as well. or Tuesday to vote. Old Joe still sharper than Trump by leagues, says the Storm Virgil. Lord Dark Blood said, Luke, I prefer you over David. Woo, we're going to get a rivalry going here. I am super close to passing up the size of his channel, so I guess a lot of people feel that way. No, I'm kidding. We absolutely love David here at the Luke Beasley Show. That is the official position of the Luke Beasley Show. All the love in the world. What can be concerning is his age. See, okay, I don't actually care about the number on the page as far as age goes with presidents or people in power. What I care about is, does that age clearly manifest itself in some sort of lack in mental sharpness, right? Would it interfere with their ability to do the job? If they're really old but clearly still 100% capable, it doesn't really bother me, if that makes sense. Because there's some people who are 70 and are already experiencing horrible ramifications of aging and, you know, could never do the job. But then there's also some people who are 80 and are perfectly great and could do it. So I think the number on the page as far as age goes is just a possible warning. Hey, make sure that they're completely mentally sharp because they do have a pretty large age on paper. Larger number. Okay. Now let's quickly, Ellen is with me, take a look at this bonkers interview that Chris Cuomo did with Kanye West. Very concerning.
Kanye West joins us now. As you know, he's been all over the headlines, and not just because...
By the way, Chris Cuomo started this new show of his, and I watched the opening episode and then a few interviews. Okay, I think what happened with him and his brother was definitely wrong, for sure. And it was probably even the correct decision from CNN to do what they did. But separating from that, he was always one of my favorite people on CNN before all that happened compared to the other nightly news people. But I'll be honest, I don't love his style now. He's kind of trying to do some aspects I like, but he's kind of trying to do the like not left, not right, but forward type thing. And what he keeps saying is not about left or right, it's about reasonable. And while I recognize we are really divided and we do have to come back to some sort of unity if we're ever going to heal or live through another era of America, I don't like when people pretend it's that simple. Like, oh, let's stop being divided on left and right and just be reasonable. Yeah. Obviously, everyone who is on the polar opposites that you're describing thinks that they're the ones who are being reasonable. So it's not really a solution, even though on some things he points out correctly. For example, gun regulation. Over 80% of the American population supports these certain policy actions, but nothing is acted on those. And that's an example of us really not being as divided as we think, but then the political system getting in the way and causing us to think we are. But whenever overall you pretend like I've solved it, we no longer have to worry about divisions because we're going to choose reason over anything else. It's like, all right, cool. It sounds nice coming out the mouth, but that's not really a good political proposal. He's better at how he describes it than Andrew Yang is, because Andrew Yang says a similar thing. And again, he makes some really good points, but that's kind of my initial feeling about his new endeavor and new show and everything.
His music is dominant as a genre in and of itself. There's no question about the man's artistry and mastery. I got 2 generations of people in my family that love his music. But it's not about his music right now. Most recently, it was announced that he is making a bid or a deal at some stage to acquire the conservative social media platform Parler, which is right now offline. Why? Is this because he was kicked off Twitter and Instagram? Is that what it's about? Let's discuss the relevance and the resonance with the man himself, Kanye West. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, but I want you guys to hear me and see me. Can you hear me and see me?
I can. I see you. You're in the back of a car. You got a hoodie and a hat on.
Okay, cool. I see it. I see the double. All right. You guys are supposed to be made aware to use my legal name, Ye. I've changed my name like how Cassius Clay changed his name to Muhammad Ali. I'm sure you guys didn't mean it as any disrespect, but Anissa on the Chiron changed my name to Ye. You can say formerly known as Kanye West if you'd like to, but my name is Ye.
Why'd you change it?
Sir, I need to have the name changed.
We'll change it.
Yeah, but
we'll change it. I'm asking you, why'd you change it? Just so people can understand.
It's interesting how people operate, especially super narcissistic, spent much of their life as a huge celebrity type people, how their brains function, because it's totally fine if you want to ask people to call you by the name that you have changed your name to, or even if it's not official that you've changed it, you just want to go by something else. Of course, and I think people should respect that. But it's funny how seriously he takes that, and it's like hurting his feelings that it's not being used properly. But then he doesn't see an issue with being super anti-Semitic, and that to him isn't justifiably being called out as offensive to people. It's like real sensitive about himself, doesn't see at all why people would be sensitive rightfully about the language he's using towards them. Very strange.
Well, actually, I don't owe people an explanation to start off with. I have the right to change my name. I have the right in America to vote on whoever I want to vote on. We have certain rights where, as celebrities and even as the black voting bloc, as they call it, the black vote, are forced to, always talk about their finances, always talk about their names. But it was really, the name West is a slave name. And I wanted to free myself of all of the older mentality. That is the reason I'm telling you that.
Understood and appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so let's go. Now, what's the questions we got?
So first one is, where you are, there is curiosity. You said that you're going to meet with the former president this week. Is that why you're traveling right now?
No, I'm actually going to meet with the CEO of Parler right now.
So that's real, that deal. You think it's going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely.
And why do you want Parler?
Well,
I know he's going to get to it in this interview. It's a little odd to me to structure the interview this way, where you don't start off with the, hey, the reason why I'm bringing you on, because Chris Cuomo wouldn't be having Ye on otherwise. The reason why he's bringing him on the show is because of the recent anti-Semitic stuff. So starting out the interview as if you're just catching up, or why do you want to buy Parler, or like, it's kind of bizarre. Get to the point. Come on.
The CEO is just really incredible, like what he's been able to do. Like even before we discussed me taking ownership of it, he was able to get it unbanned off of Google and off of Apple. So people had there were some people who worked in social media that hit my people immediately saying that the app was banned, but it wasn't the case. He actually had worked on removing the ban on it. And why would I remain in a place where I'm just tolerated? Why not go to a place where I'm celebrated? It's actually something Kid Rock just gave me a text about that. Go to
Yeah, sure. Go somewhere you're celebrated. We're not going to celebrate you for being hateful towards a group of people for no reason.
Places where you're celebrated, not where you're just tolerated. I bring a lot of attention to these platforms, to Instagram and to Twitter, and they silo you. They shadow ban you. Everyone knows I was shadow banned on Instagram. people would go and say, hey, he's running the algorithm.
I know that doing these types of interviews is very difficult, but Chris Cuomo needs to cut him off and get... Because if you're just bringing him on to kind of say all the things he's been saying in other settings, there's not a whole lot of value to the discussion in my mind. The only reason why you would want to bring on someone who's so unhinged is to publicly make clear to them the wrong things with what they're saying and see if you can get some sort of awareness of that, I guess. With someone like Ye, though, I don't think there's any point, honestly, because he's not gonna get the pursuit of some sort of understanding. No chance at all. So you might as well just let him do his thing somewhere else.
Whatever term they use. And then I'd see on my Instagram that I had only reached 30 million people. And that's because Instagram is, was purchased by Mark Zuckerberg, who, from what I can see, has a left agenda. So people are using their technology to silo any messaging that they don't agree with.
So couldn't it also be that you have said things that offend the community guidelines, like anti-Semitic comments and things that are seen as insensitive and potentially threatening to communities that we try to protect?
Well, I don't like the term anti-Semitic. It's been a term that's
really?
People, specifically in my industry, to get away with murder sometimes, literally, and get away with robbing and doing bad people. People always say, I got screwed on a deal. Would that become as a surprise to you if I said, hey, a music exec screwed someone on a deal? Does that sound kind of like normal, commonplace to you? So for me,
it doesn't have anything to do with being anti-Semitic unless you believe that all record producers are Jewish, or, it's when you talk about Jewish people specifically as targeting them that creates a problem.
It's anti-Semitic, but I don't believe in that term. One thing is, black people are also Jew. I classify as Jew also.
That's insane. Can you imagine? Anytime someone calls you out for being bigoted in some kind of way, you just say, well, I don't believe in that, so it's not. I don't believe in it.
So I actually can't be an anti-Semite. So the term is actually, it's not factual.
Doug, welcome.
But
I understand you think that, but I don't think that's a common understanding that black people can say whatever they want about Jewish people.
Well, I'm willing to talk with inside the common understanding until we get the truth. The common understanding more oftentimes than that, nowadays, is not the truth. All right, so think about this. But let's just take a woman could have one bad man in her life that can make her dislike men.
No.
Mm-hmm.
It can happen, but you would also have to call that out as incorrect. You can't hate an entire group of people for bad experiences you've had with individuals that fall within that group, because you're blaming actions on something that has nothing to do with the cause of those actions. If he feels like he's been, screwed is the term he keeps using, by record producers or record executives, the reason why they did that is because they're, whatever it is, they're trying to make more money, or they're trying to become more powerful in their industry, because they're an executive. Them being an executive is what is causing them to do those things. The fact that they're, according to him, some of them are Jewish doesn't make any sense to connect that to the actions that you're upset with them about. Same thing with the example he cited. You can't hate all men because of instances you had with men. You can't hate all black people for instances you had with black people. You can't hate all white people, and on we go. You can't hate all Jewish people. Because what you do when you start thinking that way, and especially societally thinking that way, is justify some horrible, horrible actions on people who have nothing to do with the experiences you've had, and terrible genocides have happened because of the mindset that we can connect oftentimes fake stories. But even, let's say you have real experiences that you feel like were bad, and you're connecting those to a characteristic of them that has nothing to do with what caused those actions, then you get in some very dangerous territory.
Let her have 2, let her have 3, let her have 4. There's got to be over 10 times that I've been screwed or bad business has been done with me just in the past 2 years, in the past 2 years alone. And what I'm doing, I'm calling.
Yeah, so be angry about those instances. Don't connect it to an entire group of people. It's just crazy that people don't understand this.
The Jewish community as a whole to say, people say to me, oh, we grew up on Ye. And talk to your brothers. Ask them, why is Ye upset? Everybody, all they want to do is silence and shoot the messenger.
Yeah, but you have to understand. You have to understand how.
I feel like that he is using that term incorrectly, the messenger. Because when people say that, they mean someone else is delivering a message through me and I'm giving it to you. So for example, if someone told me to tell you that they thought your shirt was ugly, and then you got mad at me, I would say, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just conveying what they wanted you to know. But he's saying don't shoot the messenger as in don't shoot the person who's saying the message themselves. They're coming up with it themselves. As in, we can't criticize you. That doesn't make sense.
Oh, wait a second. You have to understand I'm not finished, sir.
All right, but you already made a point that I need to deal with. But go ahead. Let me know when you're done.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I don't mean to be rude on your show. Thank you for the platform. Everyone wants to shoot the messenger. And you look at how your point was going to start. You have to understand. But the thing is, the Jewish people that I'm talking about don't have to understand. And that is that privilege that I'm not going to allow. When I wore the White Lives Matter t-shirt, the Jewish underground media mafia already started attacking me. They canceled my 4 SoFi Stadium shows, right?
This is such an interesting thing that happens too, because once you put on whether it's deep state conspiracies or the Jewish people conspiracies or QAnon, which these all kind of connect, you then see everything through that lens. So he said something that societally is pretty universally offensive. People assume that you're going to have some sort of social consequences for, and thus people who were organizing his events, who were not wanting to be associated with him at this time, canceled by some manner, apparently, the shows that he had, which always happens. Whenever you get in really hot water with the public, then other entities or people don't want to be associated with you at that point in time, right? And so instead of seeing it as, wow, I said something controversial and now people are responding accordingly, he sees it as the underground Jewish media mafia somehow secretly canceling his shows.
They had the press, the same people, the 78 outlets that when I was arguing with Pete Davidson and Trevor Noah, they called me an abuser for arguing with people about my ex-wife and my family and when I get to see my kids and when I don't. And they just immediately disrespect me. They keep the crazy narrative going. They never call me a billionaire. We never talked about, even on this one right here, hey, tycoon, billionaire, visionary, inventor. These are never used. If you go to like New York Times or Wall Street Journal, whatever, they always say the rapper, the rapper. It was hard enough for us to get fashion designer.
What? That's so funny. They don't put in stories that I'm a visionary. Show me the last time that the New York Times was like, hey, there's a story about this artist. Visionary, yay, has done blah, 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 blah. Such a weird term to use. Because what did you get famous off of? Being a rapper, right? You got famous off of your music. And so that's kind of the label that's going to be attached to you the most consistently. But to him, it's the underground Jewish deep state that's preventing people from calling him a genius visionary.
I'm gonna give a pause so you can address what you want to address.
Appreciate it. So, look, there is no Jewish media cabal, mafia. That is a figment of either your imagination or a projection of a prejudice, okay? You may have had
True.
bad business dealings with people. It's about those people. It's not about their religion or faith. And I know that you are intelligent and understand that when you target people because of their faith, other people may do so the same. They've been targeted before. They've been abused and killed because of what they believe and who they are. So we don't want to tolerate that. And you're playing into that right now, whether you know that or not.
I won't tolerate it as a black person. What you just said was a statement. You're trying to say that there isn't a collective. Over 50% of the executives in Hollywood, the CEOs, are Jewish. And these guys know each other.
That's different than saying it's a mafia and that they act as Jews in some way, as opposed to just being businessmen. One plays to a prejudice. The other one just plays to people and an ugly business, which is what the record business is. So you can have your feelings about it, just don't ascribe it to their faith.
Earlier, no, wait a second. You can't tell me what to do or feel. First of all,
I know, but I can tell you what is wrong about what you say.
Yeah, just as much as you have the right to go and scream and be anti-Semitic, we have the right to criticize you for it.
No, you said that it's not a mob. Mob culture. Here's the idea of a mob. People target. There's no term. Have you ever heard the term the white vote? Because there isn't a white vote, because white people can vote the way they want. Black people, we fought. My grandparents, my mother fought in civil rights. My grandfather drove the first march out of Oklahoma. My mother used to work for Jesse Jackson at Operation Push. My dad was a Black Panther. My family are freedom fighters, and we fought for the right to vote. You realize when I wore a red hat that my life was threatened?
I know.
By my Jewish managers, by my Jewish lawyer, by my Jewish accountant,
your lawyer
by my
and
Jewish
your accountant
friends inside the
your
music
life?
industry. He said not specifically the accountant, but there were many people who threatened my life. Also, my family was torn apart off of my political opinion because of my ex-wife's attachment to the Clinton administration. I mean,
this is the other thing that I've pointed out when debating conspiracy theorists is the way your brain works is one in which it's so or is characteristically set in such a way that it will make it so hard for me to unravel for you all the things. It'll be clear to the audience because I'll just say a couple reasonable things and you'll spin off and they'll understand, which side is making the logical arguments. But for you, it's going to be so hard to break down what's going wrong in your mental thinking, because instead of kind of like a step-by-step method of thinking where this observation applied to some critical thinking, applied to et cetera, has brought me to this conclusion, and that leads me to this conclusion, that leads me to this conclusion. And so then you can have some sort of ability to go, okay, if we're disagreeing on this conclusion, let me walk back to how I got there, and we can work it out that way. With a conspiracy theorist, picture like a web instead, where instead of kind of like a linear chart or graph that you're looking at, it's just like a bunch of plot points connected in a million different ways, like one of those bulletin boards with all the strings and thumbtacks pushed in it. So for you, it's nearly impossible to get back to where you came to your conclusion because everything's attached to everything. So right here, you'll hear him saying, and my lawyer and the Jewish, and they tried to kill me, but they didn't try to kill me. And my wife knows the Clintons, and that broke up my family, my political. It's like, whoa, wait, how are these things connecting? So it makes it so difficult to walk them back through how they got to the incorrect conclusion that they have.
They were getting my ex-wife to push the vaccination. I didn't realize how attached they were to the left agenda when I was there. 'Cause
Vaccinations
I
are
was
not a
just
left
something-
agenda. Yay.
Okay, I understand. Okay, not specific.
Andrew, I'm so sorry to hear that. Yeah. Let me know if there's anything we could do to help. That's crazy.
Specifically the vaccinations, but period, that they're on Zoom calls during COVID with literally Biden and Kamala and Chris Paul and all kind of people, celebrities, John Legend, Chrissy Teigen, all these same group of people that come and attack me for what they call wrong think groups, you know. All
And
these
look, you
people-
don't have to like it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to say what people want you to say, but you have to understand and accept what people will and won't
that's the thing.
tolerate.
Yeah. Oh, I've talked about this so much recently, but it's so agitating. People think that they're being persecuted in some kind of way or suppressed when they have social consequences for saying things that aren't welcomed in the social circles they were in, right? That's called life. It's incredible to me that people genuinely believe, because in his scenario he got pushed out from certain celebrity spaces or had issues in his marriage or whatever it is, criticized publicly. That's an example of him and this big conspiracy to keep him down. No, that's called people like to be friends, like to associate with those that hold similar values to them. So when you use your speech, which you're allowed to, and express things that make people understand that you don't align on crucial values in their mind, then they have the right to not want to associate with you. It would be like me walking into a party and just shouting over everyone the entire time. And then leaving, and then not when I don't get invited to the next party, I'm like, oh, this is a big conspiracy among all these people to keep me from having a happy, healthy life. No, you did something that those people didn't like, so they don't want to hang out with you anymore. It's very similar in all the stories he tells and other right-wingers tell. Oh, I get so suppressed because I'm a conservative. When I tell people my views, they don't want to be friends with me. Yeah, okay. People like to hang out with people who don't disagree on issues they feel to be super, super crucial to who they are. I don't think it's impossible to be friends with someone who's very different politically, but if someone makes that decision, that's within their right.
I don't have to understand or accept because they're not willing to understand or accept. And that's the reason why I'm not backing down. People have had their careers destroyed. That's why they keep on saying, oh, well, yeah, Ye's dangerous because he will keep talking. He will keep talking.
You say. It's when you say Jewish people own the black vote. When I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people.
Own the black voice.
These are not things that you can say coming from a place of intelligence or love or anything productive.
I'm coming from a place of love and a place of we're not going to be owned by the Jewish media anymore. If you think about every celebrity,
Kanye,
if you look at their contract, and I'm going to finish what I'm saying.
I know, but you have to understand this idea of the Jewish media. That's not how it works. You're talking to me right now.
So every celebrity,
go ahead.
Every celebrity has Jewish people in their contract. This is not hate speech. This is the truth. And these people, if you say anything out of the line with the agenda, then your career could be over.
Listen,
so
I hear you. You've made that point.
Why do you keep on cutting off my point?
Because the point is because
why do you keep?
Sir, here's why.
Don't cut me off, sir. Respect my point.
I've listened to it. You've made it several times.
No, I'm not finished, sir.
I understand, but you said it several times.
I'm not finished,
and it is an
but
ugly
my people haven't heard me. My people, they need to hear. They need to hear me.
Oh, people have heard you.
Out loud what the truth is. There's a bunch of people in Hollywood that are actors, that play basketball, that play sports, that are in music, that know what I'm saying, that feel what I'm saying, and they're happy that I'm saying what I'm saying. It's not from a place of anti-Semitism.
That is inherently anti-Semitic.
And I'm also Jewish.
And if they're your friends, If they're
Why
your
are
friends,
you talking over me, bro?
because I'm trying to
make it seem
correct what you're
hostile.
saying that is
No, it's not a
damaging
because.
to decency.
No, yo, but you can't talk over me. You can't
Then
talk over
stop
me.
and give me a chance to make the point that you need
No,
to listen to.
Don't cut off. I need to make a clear point. And when am I allowed to make a point that you don't
You've
cut
been
me off?
talking overwhelmingly during this segment, and I was I'm
Well, you're
happy to give
calling
you the
me.
time, but
No, you're not. No, you're not.
well, I
It's a
can't just
hostile
give you I
environment.
can't give you unrestricted license to attack Jewish people and say
Exactly.
that
I'm
they're
not
your
attacking.
friends
I'm
because
not attacking
that's
Jewish people.
anti-Semitic and it's
Okay.
dangerous.
Are you going to give me a platform? Are you going to give me a platform?
I
to talk
am
to?
giving
No.
you a platform, but
Okay,
listen,
wait. So you
That's not
talk
how that
and tell
works.
me what
You're not entitled to spewing hateful lies. You're not entitled to go on his show and talk as much as you want. No. Andrew sent in a super chat. Thank you so much. You are the man. Okay, dumb question, Luke. Who does your hair? The new cut is dope and nice to see you live again, man. Thank you so much. It's great to be live. I will be live much more often now. Now that we've introduced Ben to the show, the producer, thanks to the amazing growth that we've been getting and the resources that provides, now I have much more time to do stuff like this, which I'm really excited about. Plus, I was waiting until I could get the proper setup so my live streams would be good and crisp and everything, and now I got it. Oh, and who does my hair? I'm not going to say, because I'm doing a really good job lately of keeping all of my private details so that I can't be harassed. And if I said it, I think it's a local place, so it'd be very specific because it's really close to where I live. But a place, a barbershop.
I could get my
all right,
idea
good.
all
Right
the way
after
through.
I ask you this, I'll give you the rest of the time before you go. Here's my concern for you. When I hear how you talk about your personal life and you put things out there and you get into these looping thoughts of what you believe.
Kevin Poole said, I believe it is possible for women and men of goodwill to disagree often profoundly about matters of social and political policy and still have respect for one another. Witness Obama McCain. I totally agree with you. I mean, when you're super separated, oftentimes people don't want that. They don't want to do that, and so they don't want to be friends. And I'm saying that's their right. I actually have tons of people in my life who are very different than me politically, and it's super fun because I like talking about these types of things as long as I know they're respectful and loving in their heart. Now, someone like Ye, I could never associate with because it's not just a political difference; it's a fundamental difference about what we believe in way too significant of ways.
It sounds to me like you are sometimes out of.
No, it's not super cuts or great clips. No, have gone there, of course, but I upped the ante. Actually, it was a very affordable haircut, but it's a more it feels cooler because it's like a local place. I'll have a guy, you know.
Control, and that this is something that you should be dealing with. Now, I'm not excusing your thoughts as illness, okay? People attacked me for that and said, hey, just because you're concerned about whether Kanye West is taking care of himself emotionally and mentally.
My name's Jay, sir. My name's Jay.
Ye, I'm sorry. Ye is taking care of himself mentally and emotionally. You shouldn't say that. He has to be held to account for what he says. Both things can be true. Have you been taking care of your health? And in terms of making sure that you are behaving and thinking at your best.
Wait, Andrew, you said I think you have a hairdresser, Luke? You think I have a dedicated hairdresser? Yes. Just you can't see, but right off camera, I have my makeup department and my hair department over there.
I love what the way you worded it. What you don't realize is when it runs back, people are going to say, wow, have you been making sure you're behaving? If you run that back.
That's not what I'm
you're
saying.
gonna be like,
That's not what I'm saying. You're trying to cheapen the point. I'm trying to make sure that you're healthy and you're taking care of your health.
Did you work out this morning?
No.
Okay. The thing is, okay, so when do I have a...
But I took my medicine.
But
I took my antidepressant medication that I take every day.
That was a big move on his part to volunteer that information.
Bro, you're cutting me off. When do I get a platform?
It's all you. Go.
Okay. I don't have to say how much money's in my account. I don't have to say who I voted on. I don't have to say why I changed my name. The life for a black person in America is like a constant test. Even after we're out of high school, after we're out of college, we're always being questioned. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Do you think that I just had the right, and this is a rhetorical question because I don't want you to answer it. Do you think I had the right to just vote for Trump? I didn't even vote for Trump because of the people that were around me.
Yes, you have the right.
Okay, so for all of my fellow entertainers that know what I'm saying, I'm not speaking what is called hate speech. I'm saying something that happened out loud to me. And when I'm saying
So say what happened to you. Don't talk about an entire group of millions of people. Not that difficult to understand. And call out a part of who they are that has nothing to do with the bad experiences you've had. Just say, I had a bad experience with a music executive. Okay, cool. No one would have cared. I mean, they would have cared probably more about the bad experience and sympathizing with you. When you make it about them being Jewish, you no longer have any sort of, there's no motivation on the part of everyone else to care about what you're saying because it just seems like you're expressing your hate.
is, when I said DEFCON 3, what I was saying is, I'm going to talk about all these things that I saw that just so happened to be by Jewish executives or Jewish friends of mine, where I saw people pulling my coattail, telling me behave.
Okay, you get the point. I'm bored of this. But yeah, he doesn't seem to understand the distinction that was attempted to be made by Chris Cuomo. Okay, now we get into the Russia-Ukraine misconceptions from some people on the left. A bunch of people on the left. I don't get it. Guys, we're supposed to be better than this. But a bunch of people who are typically... Okay. The first person I'm going to show you is just a grifter, and he's not actually progressive. But the second thing I'm going to look at is actually someone who usually is very progressive, who has not horrible takes, the second person, but not great. First person, horrible takes. Horrible. So, what's the general talking point we're hearing from some people, a lot of people on the right and some people on the left? A lot of people on the left. The United States is funding what's going on in Ukraine and preventing it from being peacefully ended. Now, are we funding the defensive actions, the fight of Ukraine? Yes, we are. And it's awesome that we're doing that. And it's probably playing a huge role in why they're way more successful in that effort than anyone expected. Are we to blame, the United States that is, for the continuation of this invasion? No. What are you talking about? People like to pretend that somehow the United States coerced Putin into invading Ukraine and it's actually Ukraine's fault and it's actually the United States' fault that this is all happening. Very strange. Well, Jimmy Dore, if y'all don't know who that is, he's someone who pretends to be on the left, pretends to be progressive, but all he does is peddle right-wing talking points. It's very strange. The chat is distracting me. But here's an example of his dishonesty. He was covering AOC, having people come to her event and scream at her, and I'm pretty sure these people were right-wingers, but pretending to care about AOC as a progressive and saying, oh, you're funding this war and we're all going to die from nuclear Armageddon because of you. And Jimmy Dore's coverage of it just reveals how nasty his analysis is around the issue of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And if you watch kind of the totality of his coverage of this conflict, you can just scroll through his channel. You'll tell by even the titles. It's like Ukraine forced Putin into invading and stuff like that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yes. So here we go. So now somebody, so they're all voting for more war and nuclear war. So
look what he's saying, that AOC voting to give aid to Ukraine while they're fighting for their right to exist as a country, is AOC funding for more war and nuclear war. What are you talking about? If you want the war to end, go talk to Putin. This has nothing... The United States isn't to blame for Putin continuing this invasion.
They're voting to ramp up the war with Russia and war with China, and we're on the brink of a nuclear war, and they keep voting for it, and so somebody confronted them over it.
Congresswoman, none of this matters unless there's a nuclear war, which you voted to send arms and weapons to Ukraine. Tulsi Gabbard, she's left the Democratic Party because there are a bunch of war hawks. Okay? You originally voted, you ran as an outsider, yet you've been voting to start this war in Ukraine. You're voting to start a thermonuclear war with Russia and...
Andrew said, thank you so much for another super chat, Andrew. He said, do you think we're in a proxy war with Russia? In a sense, yes, right? But that's not what it's about. We aren't trying to be at war with Russia for some geopolitical gain. Now, there are geopolitical wins and gains we could get out of this now that it's happened, because a weakened Russia is definitely better for the world, but that wasn't why this happened. So it's not a proxy war in the sense of the cause of it is two larger powers clashing. The cause of it is a larger power trying to hurt a smaller power, and then another larger power coming in to defend the smaller power.
China, why are you playing with the lives of American citizens? You're playing with our lives.
There will be no neighbors if there's a nuclear bomb.
Doug said the U.S. is to blame for the continuation of the response. If not for us, Ukraine wouldn't be here. Yeah. You're correct about that. I'm saying we're not to blame for Putin continuing his invasion. But we are one of the reasons why Ukraine is even able to continue fighting right now, because of the level of resources and stuff they've been given, which is good.
You voted to mobilize and send money to Ukrainian Nazis. You're a coward. You're a progressive socialist. Where are you against the war mobilization? He's telling the right truth. You have done nothing. Tulsi Gabbard has shown guts where you've shown cowardice. I believe
Tulsi
in you,
Gabbard.
and you became the very thing you sought to fight against. That's what you've become. You are the establishment, and you are the reason why everybody will end up in a nuclear war unless you choose to stand up right now.
Look at him clapping. AOC, oh my God, this makes me so mad. He's saying that AOC is responsible for a possible nuclear war, or she's a part of the group of people in power who are responsible. You got to go to the doctor, my man. The host of the show, Jimmy Dore, the guy shouting, that's crazy talk. There are bolts loose in your brain, I'm telling you. You think the United States in this situation is going to be to blame, unless some crazy thing happens and all their policy changes, for nuclear war? No, you know who's to blame for it? The person threatening it. That makes sense, right? We can all agree on that. The person to blame, or the government to blame for a possible nuclear catastrophe, is the one who keeps threatening to do that. That makes a lot more sense than the side defending the victim in this situation. Yeesh.
Now, and denounce the Democratic Party. Will you
Guys, this guy pretends to be a progressive. As if.
do that? Yes or no?
No.
Okay, simple. Are you going to stop nuclear war? Yes or no?
So now, I don't know if you saw what she says. She's telling him there's a line. If you want to ask a question, there's a line. Remember, she told us to cause a ruckus. Remember, she told us that you have to stop being polite.
So the context of this is previously he set up the story by looking at old statements and tweets by AOC saying one of the responsibilities of activists is to make those in power uncomfortable and protest them and make noise. And so now he's saying, oh, she's so hypocritical because she's saying that they should stop shouting during her town hall. Okay. There is an issue we have with politicians in our country. Not listening enough to their constituents. Yes. And one of the ways you should rattle their cage is to protest them peacefully but protest them. And if that is annoying, if that makes it harder for them to go out in public because they're always getting protested, and okay. And you should hold them to account. AOC right now is doing a Q&A. If you have a question for her, get in line and ask it, because I'm not saying that because I don't like that AOC is uncomfortable, if she is, that you're disturbing her. It's fine for those in power to be made uncomfortable. You're getting in the way of other ones of her actual constituents of hers asking their question and getting their question answered. So you're not just disturbing the politician in this situation. You're preventing her from doing something that is awesome that I wish more politicians did more of, which is talk to your constituents directly.
Polite, and you have to start raising your voices. You have to start making people uncomfortable.
Time to queue up.
Andrew, Jimmy Dore is whack. You said these days, I don't know about his content previously. I honestly never kept up with him. I don't think I've ever actually watched his channel except for when I would hear about crazy things he said and then go check out kind of the context. But maybe in the past he was more reasonable. I just know now it's wild.
Doing it, somebody's doing it to her because she actually has power now and she's voting for more war, and someone's calling her on it, and she's telling her to be, hey, remember all that shit I said? It was bullshit. Forget it. It wasn't real. You're not supposed to be rude. You're not supposed to cause a ruckus, and you're supposed to get in line, get in the queue, and when it comes to your turn, we're gonna turn off the mic. So he keeps going.
There is no line, because this is bullshit. None of this matters if we're all dead.
You're right. You're totally right. So tell Putin to stop threatening nuclear war.
None of it. You know that. Then let's take it up right now, because this is the only thing that matters.
And I just want to say this one more time, because I know a lot of progressive shows are kind of like, I don't know if we've given some aid and it's good that Ukraine's standing strong, but, also we should think about, I want to say this directly. I am 1,000,000% supportive of all the aid we've given, and 1,000,000% supportive of giving more aid. Zero ambiguity there. 100 gazillion% supportive.
This is the only thing that matters right now. We could be in a nuclear war.
Does that mean that some of it didn't get in the wrong hands or was used ineffectively or blah, blah, blah? No. Does that mean whatever? You get the point. I'm sure that has happened. When you spend this amount, when you send this amount of money, you're going to have some issues with the execution of that. Doesn't matter. You can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Hopefully those, are minimal, but we got to do what we got to do. And it's completely justified what we've given and what we should continue to give. And we'll have magnificent positive ramifications for years to come if Ukraine's able to stand strong.
War at any minute, and you continue to fund it. That's what's going on. Why not?
She said, I will get to the issue. That's what she keeps saying. I will get to it. Why not right now? Just says Q&A. Here we go.
Now!
As if that's so weird. Such a weird dude. It says Q&A, so you're supposed to just shout out when you want to say something. Ugh.
Because you are being rude.
To all the constituents there who want to get their questions answered, you nutcase.
Oh.
Why? Because now she's upset that... Look, by the way, no one's there. No, and by the way...
You saw when the camera panned, there were more people, but it's fine. It's just a little Q&A from a congresswoman. She doesn't have to have a huge rally every time she does one of these. Now she gets to have a more intimate discussion with these people. That's cool.
There's no cover charge.
You're being rude to our deaf and invisible guests. Is this Q&A or QAnon? Am I right?
So now, after she told us you're supposed to be impolite, you're supposed to cause a ruckus, you're supposed to make people uncomfortable. Now she's the powerful, and someone's doing exactly that. And first she said I was being violent. And now she's saying he's being rude. And that's why she's not going to talk about nuclear war, because it's rude.
Okay, I can't even listen to him any further. Ugh. So gross. Literally apologizing for and covering for a regime, an individual, a government that is slaughtering civilians just because they want to specifically Putin wants to bring Russia back to its former Soviet Union glory. No, you don't get to do that, especially not in the world that I want to see built, which is one in which more powerful countries don't get to just do stuff like this. Now, it's not perfect. The United States has done stuff. This is definitely horribly wrong, but I wouldn't have been against if there was, like, here's a way to explain this. A lot of people, when you talk about this issue, they're like, the United States shouldn't be getting involved in these affairs across the world. We're such a superpower and we've done so many horrible things ourselves that we shouldn't be blah, 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 blah. Wait, if you and I both agree that the United States is still probably still the most powerful country in the world, then why wouldn't we both agree, as long as that's the reality, the United States should be encouraged into doing as many good things as possible and discouraged from doing as many bad things as possible, right? So because we do have the power we have, why not use it to defend a country that's getting absolutely, its citizens slaughtered and its military for no reason, because of the lust for more power and territory and a distorted view of Ukraine being rightfully Russia in Putin. Why would we sit on the sidelines and allow that to happen? That to me is just as active of a decision and an action as stepping in and supporting. Now, because of Russia and them having nukes, we have to be careful, and that's why we're not putting troops on the ground and blah, 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 blah. But everything we have done so far has been for the correct end. So bringing up past the bad things we've done is like saying, if you do something bad, you can't then try to do good things later. What? That doesn't make sense. We, because of how powerful we are, have done things and not been held accountable for it that are bad. That doesn't mean that whenever, for whatever reason it is, geopolitical reasons, you know what I'm saying? Oh, fishy, the government wants to weaken Russia now that this war has started. Whatever the reason is, if we happen to use that power for good ends, let's support that. It's wonderful. Not that hard to understand. Okay, now, I want to be very, 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 very clear. This next person we're going to watch is not at all in the same world as what we just watched, okay? This is not someone who's always dishonest and terrible. And you'll hear his explanations are way more reasonable. He totally understands that Putin is the aggressor, and we should have sent some support and maybe should keep sending more, but just need to attach it to something. But the talking points within this, that again, I think are coming from a good faith place. This is a little bit of a debate that happened.
I don't want to...
are getting spoken a lot on the left, and so I just want to kind of break down why it's not worth it to go down this thought path.
Tone police. I'm going to say my piece on Ukraine, and then I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
So obviously I've called in before. I've mentioned my wife is from Ukraine. My mother-in-law, who's sick in the other room, is too. And, when I read on Twitter, there's explosions in Kyiv, I've got to let them know so that they can call people and make sure things are okay. So I understand that there's a personal bias that comes into this, but, and I follow the war probably closer than a lot of people because of that. But from my perspective, the Western weapons are highly effective. They've taken back a huge amount of territory. They're being used to protect the skies, the air defense systems and things that they've received from Europe and the West. But also I just think like Digby said the other day, there is growing global fascism, and it's a serious thing. And the Russian army is at potentially a breaking point. I know that's, a scary
I know the guy's setting it up very long. We're waiting to get to his response.
Position for them to be in, but to me, that's a good thing that they be defeated. The other day, Putin announced annexation of 4 territories. And I don't think you guys covered it, but he basically gave a Tucker Carlson style. There was part of it. It was from Tucker Carlson about how in the West they'll change your kid's gender and they make up pronouns. Like, it's straight out of a Tucker monologue.
Yeah.
I
don't know if we ever got footage of that. We should look for it.
Yeah. So if there's time for, and I know it's not that kind of show, but like, if there's 20 minutes to talk about Joe Rogan getting a cat box story wrong, like, it bears mentioning that a nuclear power who's engaged in an unprovoked war of aggression against a country of 45 million people is talking about exterminating LGBT people and using the same terminology as our fascists, who are also in a position of potentially rising back to power. And that's like a scary place to be in. And we should be standing up against it and fighting against it. And I just don't think, the idea that...
I promise eventually he's going to start talking and then I'll have something to respond to, because I agree with what the caller is saying. But a quick plug that is crucial. I have started doing a legit bonus show. So previously I would kind of do what I'm doing now, which is play stuff, respond to it, it's not prepared stuff. It's just kind of things that have come into my mind. And I'm like, I want to go over this in a non-formal setting. Things that I wouldn't cover on the show, but I just kind of like watch. Now it's an actual show. Still more laid back, because I think that's fun, where it's not just everything as formal as my main show, but as many stories and stuff as we do during the main show, if not more. We blaze through them. And so what I do throughout the week is I just read a comment. I'm going to respond to that, Doug, in a second. What I do throughout the week is my show, but then I always have stories each day when I'm preparing for the show that I don't get to cover. So I put those in a doc, and at the end of the week, I cover all of those, and only the Patreon members get to watch it. So patreon.com/Luke Beasley, where you get the full video version of the show. If you've come across me and you're just watching my stories as they get released on YouTube, you're limited in the amount of ongoing content you get. You got to click on new videos. You got to wait for them to come out. But if you're a patron, you get the full show sent to you. Boom. Every single day. Hours before all the clips are uploaded. Days sometimes before the last clip of that show is uploaded on YouTube. And so it's super awesome. Plus you can watch the entire show all in one big moment. Okay, Doug. Luke's rise and fall and re-rise again as a young YouTuber with hopes and dreams, who then gets swayed by the trappings of his own fame, only to crash back to reality and then rebuild again. When was my initial fall? I'm confused. In the grand scheme of things, I'm just starting all of this still. I haven't had enough time to rise and fall yet. What are we talking about? But I guess you're predicting that's gonna happen. Plus, I've only started doing like this level of show where I do an entire, 30 to 50 minute show every single day, and it's high quality content. I have the proper studio and all that. It's definitely a new era, I would say, with the proper quality production that I'm proud of, because I always just didn't have the resources or money to put together everything I needed to do a fully professional show until we got a good amount of growth that allowed me to do that. So I know you are
creative thinking on, well, what if we get involved? Like, what are the worst case scenarios? And you have to do that. Like, if we send weapons, what are the repercussions? What are the things that could happen? Potential blowback, of course. But I don't see any engagement on the left.
On the other side. On the other side of that.
Okay, let's let Russia wash over a country of 45 million people, where there's been mass graves, the destruction of a language and a culture, And a guy.
Okay, I'm sorry. Dang it. I wasn't going to do this. I have to respond to Jimmy now. I was trying to ignore, but it's too funny. This is a thing I get a lot. Cracks me up. Especially with people that I've debated before, because it was clear that their understanding wasn't there. But Jimmy from Philly, just to give you context, if you're watching this and you're not looking at the chat, said, Luke is too young, in all caps, Luke is too young to understand politics. Now, as a wise man, my father once said, you can have, this is about a different subject, but you can have 10 years of experience, which is comprised of 10 years of experience. Or you can have 10 years of experience that's comprised of 1 year of experience repeated, right? And what cracks me up when people say, like, you're too young to know about politics, is like, you have no idea the behind the scenes work that is put in to make sure that I do have the correct understanding of all of these things. So how about you attempt to critique what I'm saying instead of something about me that has nothing to do with what's coming out of my mouth, right? But it cracks me up. I had someone else in the chat one time said, like, you suck, you're disgusting. And Jimmy from Philly is saying, high quality content, blah, like, my content's bad. I have to respond. I know, I'm sorry. What cracks me up is if you think that, like, what I'm doing is sad or is bad or is low quality or is not significant, like you were saying, you don't have 1 million subscribers. How can it not occur to you how sad it must be then that you're spending your Sunday night screaming at me in my chat? Like, if I'm so insignificant and can't understand anything and unable to talk about these issues, why is your life so sad that you sit there and scream at some person on YouTube? That's so sad. I was thinking about that. I think I mentioned that the last time someone came in and was super angry in chat. Like, it doesn't bother me. It's just funny to see that someone is cares so much about what I'm doing that they would scream all night at me. But fascinating, really fascinating. Okay, I'm done responding. I just had to once to Jimmy. I'll keep responding to everyone in the chat. I'm just saying. I usually try to ignore the people in chat who are being angry, but I just never got that. Wouldn't you look at yourself in the mirror and go, ooh, I keep saying that he's X, Y, and Z. Isn't it even more sad that I'm screaming at the guy who's X, Y, and Z?
Who's comparing himself to Peter the Great. You know, let's let them just get right up to Poland and sort of see what happens. And do we really think he's going to be less dangerous if we let that happen? Like, okay, he's going to cut back on the nuclear saber. Sorry, I'm flustered. Saber rattling if we just sort of let this happen. And I don't think he is less dangerous in that scenario. So, you know, and it would be one thing if, like, we supplied weapons in February and they were engaged in this slog, you know, no advancement on either side, then I would understand, frankly, your tone of, like, Jesus Christ, like, how long can we supply this sort of...
Yeah, this guy has done like a 5-minute monologue. Oh my gosh. Wrap it up. We want to hear what Sam has to say.
Conflict, but that's not what's happened at all. They were repelled from Kyiv, kicked all the way back to the Belarusian border. They've taken back huge swaths of territory, and they have all the momentum, and the Russians are fleeing from Kherson, it looks like. So it just seems like a really weird time to be like, this isn't working, it's too expensive. You know, I don't know. And so when I hear, I know she's not there to defend herself, but when I hear Emma say, like, we don't have a dog in this fight, so we...
Yeah, so his co-host said, and again, for anyone hopping in now, generally Sam Cedars really pretty good on his takes on things, but not on this as much. And his co-hosts are even worse. Like Emma Vigeland, what the caller just pointed out, said we don't have a dog in this fight, and that's why some reason that the funding we're doing is not correct, or we shouldn't be doing so much, or we should have conditions with it. And I'll explain why I don't believe in that once actually Sam gets to make the argument.
Our weapons are prolonging the war, so we should withdraw support. What I hear is prolonging the war. In other words, in her mind, the inevitable is that Russia wins. Okay, so we should hasten the victory of the Russians by withdrawing support. And we don't have a dog in this fight is like totally blind to the reality of the conflict. Like, do we not have solidarity with trans kids in Ukraine? Or is it only...
And we do have a dog in this fight. We should, as he said, stand in solidarity with countries. It should be a dog of ours that is in the fight whenever it's a country being needlessly aggressed upon.
Ones in Texas, or what about just, and it sounds like, I know this is going to get me labeled as a, shit lib or whatever, but, maybe democracy does matter. Like, you just had an interview about how our own fascists plan to just not look at the rules and invent new rules to not have elections. And that's bad.
All right.
So, anyways, that's all I'm going to say. I don't want you guys to think like I'm going to be calling back in every time you
wrap it up.
Have a contrary position or whatever. And I'm not going to try and tone police, but I just felt like it's worth saying that. And Sam, you've been saying people are apathetic. Nobody's paying attention to this. Nobody's questioning the amount of money. But I see it the opposite. I see Ukrainian flags everywhere I go. And people I know and I talk to and the different places I go, I see high levels of solidarity with the Ukrainian people. And in my mind, that's the way that it should be.
No, I think that's, I think there's no one really talking about, there's without a doubt, I think, broadly speaking, solidarity with the Ukrainian people. But let me just.
But what does that mean? If you're not for doing everything we can to help them win, then your solidarity means nothing to me. Again, he has a more reasonable stance than what we just saw, so he's not saying we shouldn't be helping, but we'll let him get to his point. But with all of these individuals who are like, no, I stand with Ukraine, I just don't think we should be sending so much aid. Well, then you don't really stand with them as much as you could be standing with them at least, right? Thank you so much for the super chat from, is it ZYX or Zeeks? Who said, vote blue, not coup. I agree with that.
Let me just push back on the margins here, okay? Because I think the question is, at what point, okay, so, and yes, I think the idea that Russia would come in, decapitate the Ukrainian leadership, which was their agenda, and I think, frankly, from what I've read, is exactly what we thought was going to happen. They were going to come in within a couple of days. They were going to either exile or kill Zelensky. They were going to put in a puppet regime in Ukraine. They would be able to very effectively, annex and end essentially the conflict in the Donbass and annex, Crimea, et cetera, et cetera. That didn't happen. But I guess the issue is, like, at what point? So does this end when Ukraine gets all of the Donbass back? And I mean, is that and Crimea? Is that what's the end game? Is my question. And
so again, I think it's a fair question to ask, but a weird time to ask it. Like, can we just focus on doing everything we can to make sure that all of the parts right now that Ukraine had before, boom, Russia gets obliterated, and then have that discussion? Or have that discussion, but recognize the answer in my mind depends on the reality when we get there, if that makes sense. If Ukraine has incredible momentum and is able to take back parts of Ukraine that were previously illegally taken by Russia in the first place, I say go for it. Gosh, it's so hard to read the chat and talk at the same time. Ugh.
It doesn't, and
that's the Crimea question. I think is really encapsulates it. Like I've never said like Russia should be allowed to push to Poland, and like didn't take a stance saying that we shouldn't take any give any material support to Ukraine. But in this position where, like Reagan says, like they're being pushed back, is it like, okay, retaking Crimea is just like that's a goal, and questioning that is a problem?
The question is like, what is the end game? Like, I agree with you. You cannot appease Putin. But I think part of the reason why people don't, envision the sort of the rolling through Europe scenario that you're talking about was because, for the most part, when Russia did take Crimea in 2014, when they did essentially, semi-occupy these regions, the Donbass, it did not really, it didn't show up on anybody's radar in this country, broadly speaking. Obviously, in certain areas, and there was no sense of like, oh my God. Western Europe is under threat.
And one of his two of his co-hosts were talking about in a previous segment was how, we have to be careful that we're not serving the military industrial complex and all this. And it's like, okay, wait, but right now is one of the is one of the times that it's justified to spend a lot of money in this situation. So yeah, there's going to be people benefiting from that who make the equipment and stuff. But just because they play a negative role oftentimes in these foreign policy decisions doesn't mean that now we can't make a good foreign policy decision because we don't want to accidentally help them. It's like, what? Weird.
Now, obviously, Putin's invasion of Ukraine set off some alarm bells. You have 2 new members of NATO that I think nobody would have thought even 2 years ago would ever be members of NATO. But the question is, what's the end game? I mean, is it to get rid of all the separatists in the Donbass? Is it to reclaim Crimea? Is that? And I understand where the argument that
you have to get the war even remotely into the territory of where that's...
Yes. Why are we criticizing the funding now? And when talking about our criticism, saying, what's the end game? When right now, the funding has nothing to do with taking back the places you're talking about, because we're still having to focus on right here and right now, where Russia's still occupying places that weren't previously even, a year ago under their control. So let's get it to where that's even a conversation. Let's give everything we can to make it where we have to have that debate about how far should Ukraine take it. But we're not there yet. So bringing that up now just feels like you're needlessly throwing wrenches into a pretty simple equation, in my estimation.
A negotiation that can take place, or where that's even on the table, and it's not there. So
it may not be there, but when I've talked about conditions on money, it is to, at the very least, to start to raise the question of like, what happens when we get there? I'm not saying if they're rolling through this and it's a cakewalk by the time they get to Crimea or the Donbass, that we should say, whoa, we have this plan where, there was going to be, but I think that it is not unreasonable when you are financing this war where U.S. interests, just speaking strictly about U.S. interests, okay? And yes, I don't want Russia to come in and oppress transgender kids in Ukraine. Of course not. But in terms of U.S. interests, in terms of these hundreds of millions of dollars, of these billions of dollars, I don't think it's illegitimate to ask, what's the end game?
Who's preventing you from asking that? Again, I want to remind everyone, generally Sam Cedars reasonable and stuff, but who's preventing you from, cool, ask what's the end game. That has nothing to do with passing this next package, if it's being debated.
I think that, first of all, I hear you that we, for supplying things, we have a say, or we can attach conditions. I don't know that there haven't been conditions, and I think even like the kinds of support that we've provided. There was the whole thing with the jet planes or the range of the missiles that we provide, because we want to make sure that what we're using isn't going to be used to, attack mainland Russia or whatever. But I just don't think the conflict is at a position where that's the negotiation that's happened. And I don't know if behind the scenes they've said, look, Crimea is definitely on the table. And I feel like I've heard Zelensky say that they'd be willing to have that negotiation. The problem is, you also rob.
And the other thing that keeps getting brought up is, we need to, Ukraine isn't willing enough to do peace talks. As if Putin is willing to do that. What? Yes, Ukraine should be wanting to engage in peace talks if there was somebody on the other end of the phone who actually would engage in that in good faith. But we've seen at the beginning, Zelensky tried. He said he was open to it. Putin had no interest in any reasonable conclusion or outcome to this. So then you got to give up. So we can't say we shouldn't be sending aid unless it's conditional on him being, engaging in peace talks, if we've already seen that Putin's not up for that. So the only way we're going to get out of this in any good way is for Ukraine to stomp the living, out of Russia. Within Ukraine. Don't go into Russia, obviously, but
this conflict of the greater context, which is that the invasion started almost 10 years ago, and Putin at every turn has proven completely unwilling to actually abide by any negotiations. So, if you're asking the Ukrainians to okay, well, we'll give you these annexed territories to then just, take it on good faith that that's going to be the end of the conflict, and that Putin's not going to use it to regroup and launch another attack in another 5 years. So he's not a negotiating partner that I think that you can sit down with in good faith. And so, me personally, Crimea is totally a gray area, and I think the Ukrainians would probably, if the war gets to that point, be willing to say, okay, fine. We're going back to the 2014 borders.
Well, and we can talk about that when we get there. When we get there, depending on the reality, depending on the set of circumstances that we have there, then we can use the power we have in this situation to encourage Ukraine to do whatever we want. Not whatever we want, but I'm saying encourage them to, do what we think is the best. But right now we don't have to worry about that because we need to worry about what's going on now. And talking about aid, why are we sending so much aid? Because Crimea. But what? The aid is for what they're doing right now, which isn't.
And we'll have another referendum or something in
do you think the U.S.
in Crimea?
Let me ask you this: do you think the U.S. That may be the case in terms of Ukrainians. Do you think the U.S. Do you think that let me put it this way: do you think that the Biden administration is providing these funds because they're concerned about transgender kids in Ukraine?
I don't care why they're sending it. Just keep on sending it. Thank you so much for the super chat from Jared. He said, any chance of getting an interview with Beto? Have you tried? Because y'all are suggesting that, obviously I'll try. I just want you to know, with a candidate like him, there is a very low percentage chance he's going on my show at this point in time. Keep getting that exponential growth that we're getting, and maybe, when he's hopefully governor at some point, but unlikely that would seem worth it to him. If you're trying to reach out to a young audience, There's much larger people who could help you do that. But I might as well reach out, and I'll do that.
Like, I mean, the thing is that I think that, like, I accept.
I
what
do
you're
think.
saying.
Look, this is what I think. I think it's bullshit to say. I mean, look, I've got my fair share of cynicism pumping through my veins, but to sit here and say, as I've heard on this show, oh, you know who loves this? Lockheed Martin. Yeah, they probably fucking do, but Lockheed Martin loves 365 days of the year every year because they're
Thank you. Yes, good job, caller. So it's interesting when people will go, "Ooh, Lockheed Martin loves this." I don't care. That has nothing to do with the justification, the justified nature of us doing this or not. And sometimes you're going to do good things, and people who are generally icky will benefit from them. Doesn't mean you don't do the good thing. That's strange. I'm trying to think of a good analogy. I have interviewed some very famous people. You got to just go for it. There's no time like now, brother. Yeah, I'll go for it. I'm just warning you. Don't get your hopes up.
Period. That's those are the waters they're swimming in. But what I do think, and you've hinted at this, is that we thought they were going to get their asses kicked, and they had a president on the internet saying, like, I'm ready to get killed and martyred, and they're handing out AK-47s in the streets of Kyiv, and we realized, like, they have a well-trained army, and the weapons that we provide can make a difference. And so that's what we've done. Like, are there plenty of cynical actors? Sure, but guess what? Like,
but
was Biden gonna sit there?
No. Listen,
with all of the world supporting Ukraine, and go, you know what? It's too expensive. We're gonna watch them get killed on live TV.
I have never ever said that we should not have been providing them weapons and material. I have never said that.
And you know what? I agree with you that there's all kinds of cynical interests baked into the case.
But my point is this. Is that I don't care. I don't care about the cynical interests. Obviously, when
why are we bringing them up? Then why are we bringing them up?
Brought it up, so you.
But wait. But let me just. You're not letting me finish. Why it's relevant? It's relevant because while you may say, and maybe the Ukrainian people broadly may say, we're willing to negotiate about Crimea. We're willing to negotiate about various parts of the Donbass. We're in a zone now where, and like I say, I don't think the U.S. thought it would be. I don't think the administration thought we would be here. Everyone was surprised, I think, on some level, that A, Ukraine's response was so strong, and B, that the Russian military was so really a paper tiger in many respects. And there's no doubt in my mind that if you were to negotiate Crimea or not, or vice versa, like at the end of this, and we don't know where the end is, and that's my point, but at the end of this, Putin's not going to be in a position to sort of regather and go out. I mean, they've lost 100,000 troops. Their military is decimated.
So then seize the moment and support Ukraine in trying to take back, what's rightfully theirs. What's the criticism? This is what confuses me. I've seen a bunch of Majority Report segments that like sort of are coming from a critical lens, being negative towards what right now is going on between the United States and Ukraine. But then it seems like at least Sam is articulating his thoughts in such a way that make it seem like, okay, then what's your disagreement? What are we talking about then? Everything's hunky-dory then, within the context of a very bad situation, obviously.
Made it. Which is why they were relying on Iranian advisors to come and show them how to send their kamikaze drones over there. I have no sympathies for the Russian military, but I guess my point is that like the advantage that it is in the interest of the Biden administration at one point and of the U.S. National security state and foreign policy apparatus. At one point, I don't think we're there yet, but at one point, pressing that advantage may supersede at one point what, frankly, is in the best interests of Ukraine. And like you say, we don't know if there are conditions that are placed on the Ukrainians now with these weapons. We don't know. And all I'm saying is that I do not think it is inappropriate, whether it's us entering into a conflict or us financing a conflict. I don't think it's inappropriate for the American public to want to hear an articulation as to whereabouts are the end game. And I understand you don't want to say like, well, we're going to finance this up until, the border of Crimea. I understand you don't want to be explicit about it, but to have no discussion whatsoever.
We can have it. I don't get this. Because what you're saying now isn't in line with what your show's been saying for a while. If you're saying keep the tap flowing, all the packages we want, but just we should also be talking about what we're going to do if Ukraine takes back everything they had, a year ago, and talk about what the extent of the next step should be. No one's disagreeing with that. Sure, let's talk about it. Cool, whatever. But the critique coming from the majority report has been a lot of aimed at the packages that are currently getting passed. Oh, they just keep passing package after package. But I'm cheering those packages on. Hooray, hooray.
In this country, about the end game or the goals behind this, they're unarticulated, I think is very, very dangerous.
What do you mean the goal is behind? The goal behind it is to let Ukraine get back what is theirs. What are you talking about? There's not some secret, scary goal. And now, of course, the U.S. government's going to have intentions beyond that. Of course, we want to weaken Putin and Russia, and this is a chance to do it. But at the end of the day, all the actions we've taken so far are in line with the intention to just help Ukraine stand as it should for its own right to exist. And if they want to go take the territories that have been disputed plus Crimea, again, I mean, I guess Crimea you could argue with me about, I guess. But I don't see why we wouldn't allow them to at least take their momentum into that, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Maybe we don't keep supporting if they get hung up in Crimea for a super long time. But if the momentum they have leads them into that and they're able to also take back what was wrongfully taken from them, then cool. Okay.
Because
I'm fine with that conversation, but what I'm hearing a lot.
Strictly Sega, by the way, I had to take that debate down. He requested me to take it down. And I was very nice, I guess, in that situation. I just went ahead and privated it, even though that feels kind of weird and annoying, but I did. He requested. I guess I should, ahead of debates, have them sign a paper that says like, barring some crazy extenuating circumstance where something horrible happens, you're bound to allow me to upload this, because it's really annoying when I put in a lot of work to get someone over, record it, then upload it and stuff, and then it gets views, and then I have to take it down. Like, that's not great for the channel and stuff, but whatever. I will say too, a lot of people in the comments, and we'll get back to this video in a second, but I got the critique on that debate that I did. Oh, Luke, like, you're purposely bringing on people who are less knowledgeable about politics so that you look good. What are you talking about? If you've kept up with my show at all, I literally, to a crazy extent, beg anyone and everyone to debate me. I have said my email, lukebeasleyofficial@gmail.com, a million times. I'll have people say, yeah, I'll debate you in the chat. And then no one ever emails me. And I've said my email a million times, lukebeasleyofficial@gmail.com. So this guy was willing to debate me, so I let him debate me, okay? This is not me that's trying to set up a situation where I can look smart because I bring on someone who doesn't know much about politics. If anyone is willing to debate me, any topic, I mean, it has to be political, but like, you can come in prepared and I won't be prepared. I don't care. We'll just do it. It'll be great. But people don't take me up on it. So whoever you think that's more educated on these issues than the people who have debated me before, which isn't fair because a lot of my previous debates were with very knowledgeable people. But if you're saying that about the last one, the most recent debate, then if you think you're more knowledgeable, lukebeasleyofficial@gmail.com, let's make it happen. You're not sure we disagree on anything? Yeah, I don't love debates with people that's like over something tiny because it's just not that interesting, but I appreciate the ambition.
Is that's the only conversation that some people want to have. And I've heard on this show.
Yeah, and the other thing about that debate, which I'm bummed that I had to take it down, but my heart's too soft, I guess, is as, let's see, who just said that? As Strictly Sega said, it did expose how a lot of people come to their conclusions about politics. That guy that came on the show, he's going to likely go vote for somebody. We have a bunch of people in our country who go and vote for people based on that amount of information. So yes, it's important to reveal that. I've also had, Doug, well-respected journalist. We had the objectivist dude who has done lots of philosophical, research on his lens. We had Ruminate, who's very knowledgeable. We didn't disagree that much, but we had the early on, that friend of mine. It's crazy. The critiques like that drive me insane. I've tried to stop reading those, but I just can't help myself.
A 20-minute
because it's not that I don't want criticism. Y'all have seen some people in the chat, like, Doug will always be poking at me. It's awesome. I love it. I live for it. It's the ones that are just dumb and don't make sense that drive me insane. And clearly I like, criticism because I love debating, but no one ever does that.
Conversation multiple times where...
Oh, falling apart. Sorry, guys.
At the very end, you'll be like, I guess Putin did go a little...
How did I forget this? That's so awkward. Yes, I've debated Destiny and Vosh. Those two are literally like touted as two of the best debaters in the progressive space or whatever, like online. So shut up, everybody. Oh my goodness.
A little too far. Like that's on the back.
Just to be clear, not that they would ever care or see this, but I'm just saying the reason why I left out Destiny and Vosh initially, they didn't come to my head, is because I was thinking of debates I've done on my channel, like that I organized and uploaded on my channel. Obviously, I went on their shows and debated them, but yes, exactly. And you can tell, this is what drives me crazy too. People who say a criticism is like, you do this all the time, and clearly they never watch my show because their critique makes no sense.
End of the conversation you want to have about, isn't this already too expensive? And even with Digby at the end, it was sort of like, oh yeah, I guess there were some mass graves. And to me, like, the conflict will get to the point that you're talking to, but like as massive amounts of territory are being retaken and a fascist military is being defeated.
Listen, how many tens of thousands of people did we help kill in Yemen? Like, I mean, you're asking.
We're not talking.
No,
we're not.
No, I'm not.
Talking
No,
about
but
Yemen.
no. But you're
Should
talking
we talk about Iraq too.
No. Yeah.
Let's talk about Iraq.
Well, no, I have talked about Iraq. But my point is this, is that like you're complaining about the nature of the coverage and the conversations here. And if you're going to do that, if you're going to talk about the nature of the coverage and the conversations, then you also, then what we're talking about is how we're covering it and the questions that we're asking. And in that instance, it's like, we're not emphasizing the mass graves in Ukraine relative to what? Relative to what? Because they don't exist in a vacuum. There are tens of thousands of Yemenis that we have actively facilitated their deaths. And we haven't dedicated weeks or hours of shows on that.
I'm talking about within the universe of.
Yeah, that was the other thing I've talked about on the show before. Like, we should talk about those conflicts for what they are 100%. And we should be very able to be uber critical of the United States government when they do things like that are wrong. How that connects to why we should do good things in relation to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, I don't get it. It was the Andrew Tate fan, Jared.
Ukrainian conversation. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, but it's not fair for you to limit, like in the you know, like we're not putting enough emphasis on mass graves in Ukraine. Well, there's a lot of things that we don't put emphasis on, and I understand, like, you know.
No, but what I'm.
But let me just jump in, guys. Like, this is my point about, like, making sure that trying to negotiate some sort of peace is an emphasis isn't because I think Putin's a worthwhile partner in that. I think you're probably right about his motives. It's about U.S. credibility, frankly, Reagan. I agree with you when you don't like seeing Evo Morales embrace Putin. I think that's bad. Evo Morales was cooed by America, right? Like, we don't have a trust with this sort of stuff. So I think that's why I think it's important to have those sorts of conversation. And sure, we can emphasize, like, the atrocities, but atrocities happen the longer wars are prolonged. And
so there, boom, there. You can tell Sam Cedars' producer on the mic and his co-host that isn't in this debate have more extreme views than I think Sam does. But the producer is saying prolonged. The United States, we're doing something wrong right now by not pushing for a peace deal because and that's causing the war to be prolonged and that's causing more death. The war is being prolonged because Putin doesn't want to negotiate a peace deal. Again, at the very beginning of the conflict, it was widely reported that Zelensky was willing to have conversations. He sent, representatives to go meet with Russian representatives to talk about a peace deal, and Russia had no serious proposal whatsoever. And so clearly Putin isn't interested in a peace deal. So bringing up, like, I don't know about the support with Ukraine because it's not tied to us making sure Ukraine is negotiating a peace deal is not so, because you are just casting doubt on the full justified nature of the support we're giving for no reason, because Putin doesn't want to negotiate a peace deal. That's been proven already. We're watching that. So if Putin comes back to the table and then we want to say, okay, hey, Ukraine, Putin has said he wants to negotiate, you better go negotiate, we're not sending more support. That's fair. But girl, drives me insane. But yeah, to someone in the chat, everything Sam Cedars saying here is fine, you know? His producer, again, I think is a little more weird and extreme on this issue. But also, Sam Cedar doesn't seem to just go, you know what, there's a lot of things nuanced in this conversation. But at the end of the day, as of now, I support all the money we've given, and I think we should keep sending. Because the Republican Party is now shifting on this, saying they probably won't keep sending, and some people on the left. And that scares me, because if we do completely stop supporting Ukraine's efforts, it's going to be a huge, it's going to negatively impact the war in a major way and cause Ukraine to be in a worse position. You should debate my friend Nicole. She's not famous or anything, but it's an amazing debater. But is an amazing debater. No video for her, though. Yeah, sure. Is she conservative? I'd be down right now.
So I don't think you continue wars to, like, vengeance for atrocities.
Well, I mean, that goes back, I guess, to the point I made earlier. I don't see Western supplied weapons as prolonging the war. I see them as hastening the victory of what is sort of plainly the correct side of this war, in my opinion, and the defeat of an evil fascist empire. So, I mean, I hate to put it in such black and white terms, but that's how this happened to go down. And I'm not saying, oh, you need to lead every show with mass graves, or that you have to have the mass grave report where you can.
That point isn't even as relevant because shows, you can cover what you want to cover. You may not give a lot of time to an issue for a number of reasons. I think people shouldn't be coming to the Majority Report. Well, yeah, the Majority Report or my show or Pac-Man or anything like that for like their awareness of what's going on in the whole world. You should come to our shows for commentary on what's going on. So then, like when I prepare for my show each day, it's not just here's a story that's important that happened. It's here's a story. I want it to be important. I want it to be interesting. But then I also only choose stories that I think I have something to add to. I have some commentary I want to give, some opinion that I want to share. This isn't like breaking news. Here's a bunch of things that just happened. No, it's here's my thoughts on what's happening. And so I don't actually care if they're not giving a ton of time to this part of the war, this part of the war. I care about when they do discuss the war, there's this like tone of something fishy is going on with the support we're giving. And it's fine to look into that or whatever. But right now, that's not the case. Right now, what we're doing is actually very justified, even though the United States government often does unjustified things. Okay.
Compare all mass graves in the world. What I'm saying is, in the context of mentioning Ukraine, it seems to only come up with a sigh and an eye roll about how much it's costing and how soon can we end it.
Nicole is not conservative, but has some strong opinions about Biden policy, as in critical of Biden.
Instead of saying, in my opinion, the argument should be made for intervention. And if you don't think so, then make that argument instead of just sort of rolling around and like, well,
but I think
we need to announce now somehow, like the end. And you just mentioned that.
I feel really strongly that regardless of whatever conflict we get.
Oh, by the way, if y'all have people out there who are conservative or you think would disagree with me severely on an issue, and you know that like they're not super excited about the idea of debating publicly, but they would if there was money involved, I could set like a figure that I'll pay people to do debates, I guess, if that makes it more worth it to them.
Get involved in that, it should be completely articulated.
And here's why I want to debate publicly so much for you guys is I think everyone should be aware of the fact, and it's true, that when you're producing a show, especially the way that I do it, sometimes how Sam Cedar and definitely how Pac-Man does it, where you're kind of delivering like a monologue style where it's just you can pre-plan it, you can whatever. It's hard to know like always if the ideas and beliefs they're conveying are as secure and locked in facts and properly researched just in that format, because it's like I can't ask them a question about what they're saying and they can't be challenged. So I want to not only do my show where you can see the daily coverage of stuff, but then through debates have you like kind of test if I actually know what I'm talking about, so that you can then trust my normal coverage more. Does that make sense? If you watch a debate and you're like, oh wow, okay, that person challenged him a lot and he still articulated his views in a way that I respected or resonated with, then my daily commentary, I think, will be delivered to you in a way that is more, that you can have more confidence in. And I'm not just always hiding behind the fact, or you don't have the perception of me hiding behind the fact that I can just be in my little studio, saying my stuff and not getting challenged on it. I want to get challenged. And that's why I talk so much about finding people to debate with, so.
As to what the parameters are and what we're willing to go. Are we willing, let's put it this way, right now, after spending billions of dollars on weapons, there has never been, like, are we willing to drop a nuke on Moscow? I hope not.
What?
Are we willing to drop a nuke on Russian civilians? I mean, like, I want to know what the parameters are for this thing that we're engaged in. And yes, the idea that within the context of this country, there's not enough coverage about that Ukraine is in the right here. I'm sorry, that's not the case. I mean, I watched the news. There is no debate whatsoever about the parameters or the conditions or whatever. It is just the money flows. There has not been, as far as I can tell, there hasn't been even a touch on the gas. The only thing that I have seen is like some vague notion that if the Republicans get in power, they're going to tap the brakes on this. I don't think they will. But and I don't think that's.
And why does this enrage you so much? So push for the questions to be asked, I guess. But I guess the reason why there's not any debate right now is because it's kind of like emergency response. Just give everything. This is similar to me. Ooh, if you ever heard this, you would hate this analogy. But to how Republicans during a hurricane, if it's not in their state, they'll be like, this package has some stuff in it that I don't like, so I have to vote against the entire thing, and I'm not going to act as efficiently as possible to get this aid to those people. That's what this feels like to me. It's like, listen, I'm for support in theory, but I don't like the way that we're just doing this without any questions being asked. There's not really any relevant questions right now. Just, I say send the support and then we can have the conversation while it's getting sent. You know what I'm saying? And then us nuking Moscow has nothing to do with us sending support. No. We got to keep sending support. And then behind the scenes, you know, is where they're going to have to, we're not going to have a public conversation about when they're going to use nukes. Of course, the United States government is going to have to keep that classified. That's obvious.
That's necessarily preferable at all. I just don't think it is healthy for this country to be putting money out the door like that without any conversation, because it sets the precedent for, it allows for things like Yemen. It allows for, I mean, you set the precedent that we can fund. I have seen, and I am not an apologist for Putin. I have seen literally a dozen of Putins that this country has been able to rally around to fight one war or another in one fashion or another. I'm not saying that Putin is a good guy. Obviously, I don't think I've ever said a decent word about Putin in 18 years of doing this professionally. But
you got to tell me in the chat whenever I accidentally just cut to a full screen.
What I do know about this country is that if they get into the mode of pouring money into wars, it just goes and goes. And it may not be an issue in the context of this conflict with Ukraine and Russia, but the idea that we can present at least one, and I think it's reasoned, I really do think it's reasonable to present like some notion that we should not willy-nilly, without any type of public conversation on the merits or the conditions or the parameters of funding a war. Never mind even the...
I don't get that. Like, we are having public conversation. Congress is voting on each of these individually. We're not... One of the terms that people keep using is sending a blank check. We're not saying to Ukraine, you can do whatever you want, we'll just fund however much you end up spending. We're doing one package at a time. Each one gets democratically voted on. If people want their Congress men and women to have, ask questions or have more of a debate around it, they can hit up their congressperson. We can have those debates every single time we pass the package. The reason why they're not happening is because no one feels the need to debate, because it's like seems so obvious that we would do another round each time that it comes up, I guess.
Aspect of...
And just so y'all know, I don't know if some people are assuming this. This is not me like knee-jerk responding to the issue. Because a lot of people that I respect have brought up this concern, I've done a lot of looking into it myself to decide, like, my initial gut feeling was what I'm saying now, but is this correct? Maybe is there more criticism I should have of what's going on? And the more I look into it, the more it's like, nope, everything's the way that I initially thought that it was in regard to this. And this isn't me like accidentally stumbling into being way too pro us sending aid. This is a lot of thought going into it and realizing the best stance in this situation is to maybe even go overboard with how much we're sending and how much we're helping.
Of, the potential nuclear escalation, I frankly think that is somewhat overblown on some level. But just of any conflict, I just think that is a very bad thing to train the American public to do. And it is
You're not. I love asking questions of our government. So that general critique I love, 100%. He's correct about that. It's when are you having this conversation and you're doing within a political reality where people are going, I feel like we're sending too much. And maybe not in Congress and stuff that much. Well, no, some Republicans are, but a lot in the progressive space this is happening. All the major progressive shows, except for, I won't call them out, but except for some, have been super critical or alluding to their criticism. So it's just, I don't know, this is strange to me, but he's bringing it up within that conversation, which then takes away from the debate about yes or no, I would say. But again, if you're just saying each time these things come up, we should be talking about what? Talking about nuclear war? Yeah, we are talking about that. Just seems to be unnecessary, even though the broader point he's making is always justified to make, which is we need to hold our government to account and make sure that they're doing this, blah, 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 blah. Okay, yeah. But all the aid we've sent is justified so far.
And so today it may be for a just reason, but there is no distinguishing.
And yes, if we train the American public to be okay with our government stepping in whenever one fascistic power tries to illegally annex or illegally, take over another country, another sovereign country, sure, I think Americans should be trained into being against that and being for our government supporting the victim in that situation. I don't know how us sending aid to Ukraine pretty quickly and without too much debate trains the American civilians, to be okay with our actions in supporting the Saudi Arabian government with their actions in Yemen. How does that connect? That doesn't make sense. If nothing else, it would actually make the American public pay more attention and be against what Saudi Arabia is doing, because you could draw a comparison to Russia and be like, oh, Saudi Arabia is another more dominant power doing something to Yemen. So we should think about that more. I think it's actually the reverse of what he's saying. It's opening up the eyes and being very for stepping in and being against these very strong, oftentimes right-wing authoritarian governments oppressing other countries and their people.
Between today for a just reason and yesterday for Yemen in a completely unjust reason, or tomorrow in, I don't know, some Western African country.
There is distinguishing, and that's like why we have smart shows like this one, so that we can distinguish when it's justified and when it's not. And I think because you admitted it a minute ago, that there's like really basic operational reasons why you wouldn't come out and say, you know what, we're thinking next spring we're going to get kind of tired of this. Like, there's obvious reasons why Biden's not going to come out and say April 1st, and that's it for us. We're tapping out.
I get that.
Okay, well, so it seems obvious.
Yes, I think that Russia, strategically making it look like there's no debate in the United States over sending this aid, and it's just going to keep flowing, will threaten Russia enough, or will discourage them from feeling like they can continue this, right? Because like he said, if we say, listen, we're going to support until this point, or we're going to support until this time, then Russia knows, okay, we should have to get to there, or we have to, only hold these areas or something like that. But if it looks like we're just unconditionally going to keep supporting them, then Russia's going to be a little bit more shook.
But you don't think there should be any conversation about this at all?
There is. Just have the conversation. It has nothing to do with, okay, whatever.
Well, I think we can have conversations about, like, to what extent should we get involved in any conflict, of course. But then I guess
we're having it. Ready? To what extent should we get involved in the Russia-Ukraine war? We should do all that we can without directly getting, at war with Russia, to defend Ukraine. Boom. We just had the conversation. Beautiful.
Kind of my point. I would like the conversation to be about that. Like, when is it justified? Like, is this a justified intervention to send HIMARS so that they can blow up ammo dumps, far away, or
Look,
air defense systems?
Listen,
like, we can have that conversation about any of these.
It just, in my experience, I thought when the UN, the entire UN Security Council, approved protecting Benghazi from Gaddafi, okay, and China, Russia, U.S., whoever else was sitting on the Security Council at the time, obviously France and England, signed off on protecting the people in Benghazi because Gaddafi had sworn that he was going to level the city, kill several hundred thousands of people. I thought that was a legitimate exercise, both because you're stopping a potential genocide, and the only way of assessing that, in my mind, was to basically outsource that obligation to the UN. If China, Russia, and the United States can agree on something, or the entire Security Council can agree on it, then that to me was like, I definitely believe that we should be using military to stop genocide, but the hard part is, like, how do you establish that? And I deferred to the UN out of my desire for internationalism. And that went super, super sideways. And I think there should be, when we are financing a war, we should, at the very least, be discussing these things as a nation. And if this discussion was super prominent in this country on cable news or in the newspapers, I would feel less of an obligation.
I'm so confused because I think he's covered these conflicts a lot more than I have. He's been doing, news commentary for multiple times that I have. So maybe it's like he's scarred from all these times that the United States has done incorrect foreign policy actions, that it feels weird to him to just be like, hey, we're doing the right thing. Good. But when he says we're not having a conversation, it's like we are, but everyone just agrees. Everyone doesn't. Online, people disagree. But as far as why Congress has been able to act so efficiently with the aid we've been sending is because they're having their normal process of passing these bits of support. But there's just not a whole lot of disagreement, and there's not an extended conversation because everyone's kind of on the same page. And that's kind of beautiful to see, that our government's able to, when it comes to a situation like this. Of course, their reasons could be all sorts of weird reasonings, but regardless, the outcome of it is a very fast and effective process from our government to help Ukraine.
Obligation to entertain that.
You said Sam concedes at the end. Let me see if I can skip forward to that.
Rubio more dramatically. People in the U.S. government and around. Where do we stop? I mean, is everybody agreed that we should have regime change in Russia? Because I feel like if I had 100 people listening to this, some percentage, I think the majority would say, well, no, not regime change. And another 25% might go like, well, wait, yeah, regime change.
Teach a lesson.
I mean, I think that's why we need, there are questions that are unanswered that I think we're blowing through as a society. And in this very tiny.
Does it not feel a little bit strange? Does it not feel a little bit strange to bring this up in this context? It's fine. We can ask when does it end? How far are we willing to go in supporting Ukraine? But it feels a little strange. Like you cover the passing of packages and then say, what are we going to do, regime change? Wait, but we're still concerned about Ukraine just preventing Russia from, getting a momentum change and taking back over parts that they were trying to capture of Ukraine. We're just trying to get that stabilized, But I guess if you want to have that conversation, the United States probably won't and shouldn't try to directly go after Putin. Of course, we understand the nuclear threat that goes along with that. But I don't think that's something the United States is more or less likely to do, whether or not we're supporting Ukraine right now and defending themselves.
Tiny area. I feel like we should examine these questions. Demian, I should apologize for Matt for trying to ship him and Hassan. I just really want to see if favorite East Coast, West Coast could take havers in the same room. I'm sure whatever videos that Trump people showed Lindsey Graham to get him in line may have affected Rubio more traumatically. Certainly blame that reporter in the Fetterman interview, but there had to be a producer who pushed that line of questioning, without a doubt. Ben from Chicago.
Does anyone know when he conceded?
People in the U.S. government and around. Where do we stop? Ronald Reagan. All right, we're not going to have time for any more. And when I see the absence of that conversation, it becomes more incumbent upon me. I'm inclined psychologically.
Okay. I'll just take your word for it that he kind of conceded at the end there. But you can kind of see what I mean. It's nothing with Sam Cedar. It's nothing horrible like Jimmy Dore. It's just this, again, maybe likely or definitely good faith repulsion to default or noticing yourself feel pretty unconditionally supportive of the current actions that we've taken. That probably just feels weird to him as someone who knows the history of the United States and stuff. But sometimes, whatever the geopolitical reality that led to this, sometimes, and in this situation, we're just acting correctly in supporting Ukraine the way that we have. And Biden has been very, very good about supporting aggressively, both rhetorically and in substance, in aid, while also making clear where our line is, troops on the ground and direct military involvement with Russia. And thus far, guys, the entire world has been, at least the Western countries have been supportive of, I should have said, the entire world, as far as all of the nations that could weigh in on this in a powerful manner, minus a couple or a few, have unified around helping Ukraine, which is largely why they're able to do what they're doing, plus obviously their incredible courage. And yet Putin knows he's not going to be able to directly involve with us, interact or get into a conflict with us, and we know that too. We all know that. Now, the threat of nuclear war is really scary, but I'll be honest, I don't even think Putin would do that because it would cause him to be eviscerated. As far as interacting with us in that manner, the only question that's huge that I do think needs to be discussed, this doesn't have to halt or hinder our ability to give aid, but the discussion that's crucial is what are we going to do if Russia uses nuclear weapons in Ukraine? That's tough. And I do think that's something that there is a plan behind the scenes that we obviously aren't privy to. But that's a huge decision to be made because it's a massive escalation on their part. But how we respond to that would determine if, the whole world ends. So. All right. that is today's live stream. I'll try to do this more often. It still won't be incredibly often just because of my insane schedule, but I'll try to make it more often. And I appreciate you guys being here. Fun as always. And I will see you tomorrow on tomorrow's show, the Monday show. Very amazing stuff. Until then, be magnificent.